The screaming winds of Kithara Prime carried the scent of death across the crimson wasteland. Marcus Chen pressed his back against the jagged rock formation, feeling the alien metal of the restraint collar dig into his neck. Blood trickled from the fresh wounds on his wrists, where the energy shackles had burned through his skin before his captors had removed them. "This is where your kind belongs, human," hissed Commander Vextar, his scaled hide gleaming purple in the light of the twin suns. The Zephyrian's four arms gestured dismissively at the desolate landscape stretching endlessly in all directions. Among the bones of the forgotten. Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that words were wasted on creatures who saw humans as nothing more than useful tools. The Galactic Coalition had been eager enough to hire human mercenaries when they needed someone expendable for their dirty work. Now that the job was done, they were just as eager to dispose of the evidence. "The Void Stalkers will smell your blood before the first moon rises," continued Vextar, his translator making his alien words sound cold and clinical. "They hunt in packs of 30 or more. Even your species' legendary stubbornness will not save you from what dwells in this place." The other Zephyrians in the squad chittered with amusement. Their energy weapons remained trained on Marcus, but he could see the casual confidence in their posture. To them, he was already dead. Just another human who had outlived his usefulness. Marcus flexed his fingers, feeling the familiar ache in his knuckles. 6 months of working for the Coalition had taught him much about alien psychology. They saw humans as primitives who got lucky, a species that stumbled into space travel through blind persistence rather than true intelligence. They believed human success came from breeding like vermin and throwing bodies at problems until something worked. They were wrong, but Marcus had never bothered to correct them. Being underestimated was often the greatest weapon a human could possess. "The extraction beacon you destroyed was our only way off this moon," Vextar said, taking a step closer. "Your little act of sabotage stranded all of us here. But we have a ship in orbit that will retrieve us in 72 hours. You have nothing but the clothes on your back and the certainty of a painful death." Marcus finally looked up, meeting the alien commander's serpentine gaze. "You talk too much." The backhand came faster than most humans could have tracked, but Marcus had spent years fighting creatures with superhuman reflexes. He rolled with the blow, letting it spin him away from the rock face. The Zephyrian's scaled knuckles split his lip, but the strike lacked the killing force Vexatar had intended. "Defiant to the end," the commander sneered. "I almost respect your species' capacity for meaningless gestures." 72 hours, Marcus repeated, wiping blood from his mouth. "That's a long time. Not nearly long enough for you to matter." The Zephyrian squad retreated to their transport, their anti-gravity vehicle kicking up clouds of rust-colored dust as they departed. Marcus watched until their craft disappeared over the horizon, leaving him alone with the howling wind and the gradually setting suns. He waited another 20 minutes before moving. The Coalition species were advanced, but they shared a common weakness with most spacefaring civilizations. They had grown soft, comfortable. They fought their wars with technology and overwhelming numbers, but they had forgotten the animal cunning that had once lifted them from their home worlds. Humans had never had that luxury. Marcus examined his surroundings with the methodical patience of a predator. Kithara Prime was classified as a death world, a planet where the native ecosystem had evolved to kill anything that moved. The Coalition had established a research outpost here decades ago to study the local wildlife, but the facility had been abandoned after losing 3 complete survey teams in a single month. The mission briefing had called it a simple demolition job. Plant charges in the abandoned facility's data core and destroy any evidence of illegal bioweapon research. Marcus had suspected it was more complicated than that, which was why he had taken certain precautions. The collar around his neck was supposed to prevent him from accessing the facility's remaining systems, but Coalition technology was designed for Coalition physiology. Human neural patterns operated on different frequencies, and Marcus had spent years learning to work around alien tech limitations. The collar sparked and died as he triggered the bypass he had programmed into its circuits during the mission. The Zephyrians had been so focused on his obvious sabotage of their extraction beacon that they had never suspected the more subtle modifications he had made to their equipment. Now, he had access to the facility's emergency protocols. Marcus set off across the wasteland at a steady pace. The abandoned research station was 18 kilometers away across terrain that would challenge a military assault vehicle. The temperature was dropping as the sun set, and soon the real predators would emerge from their underground lairs to hunt. But Marcus had advantages his captors had not considered. Human endurance was legendary throughout the galaxy, but few aliens understood what that actually meant. They thought it was about running longer or fighting harder. They missed the deeper truth. Humans endured because they refused to accept defeat. The first signs of movement came as the last sunlight faded from the sky. Something large shifted in the shadows between the rock formations, and Marcus caught the glint of bioluminescent eyes tracking his movement. He did not alter his pace or show any sign that he had noticed the creature. Void stalkers were ambush predators. They relied on fear and panic to drive their prey into making fatal mistakes. Marcus had read the research files during his mission prep. The creatures were roughly the size of Earth tigers, but with 6 legs and retractable bone spurs that could punch through military armor. They hunted in coordinated packs and had evolved to take down much larger prey. The first one struck from his left flank, erupting from behind a boulder in a blur of motion. Marcus dropped low and pivoted, letting the creature's momentum carry it past him while he grabbed for its rear leg. His fingers found purchase on the bony protrusion behind its joint, and he used the stalker's own speed to swing it into the rock face. The impact shattered stone and sent the alien predator tumbling. It rolled to its feet with inhuman grace, but Marcus was already moving. He had learned hand-to-hand combat from the best instructors human special forces could provide, then refined those skills fighting in alien gravity wells and hostile environments across a dozen worlds. The Void Stalker's pack emerged from hiding, surrounding him in a loose circle. Their eyes glowed like stars in the darkness, and he could hear the scrape of bone spurs extending from their limbs. Coalition research estimated pack sizes of 30 or more, but Marcus counted only 8 creatures in the immediate area. He smiled. 8 was manageable. The pack leader charged first, trying to drive Marcus back into the others. Instead of retreating, he stepped forward and dropped his shoulder into the creature's chest. The impact drove the air from its lungs and sent it stumbling. Marcus rolled past it and came up near the pack's edge, where the smaller members waited. The young ones were faster but inexperienced. Marcus grabbed the nearest by its elongated skull and used it as a club to batter its packmate. Bone cracked, and alien blood splattered the rocks. The injured stalkers retreated with high-pitched keening sounds, but the adults pressed their attack. Combat became a whirlwind of motion and violence. Marcus used every advantage human evolution had given him. His stamina let him maintain peak performance while the aliens tired. His pattern recognition let him predict their movements. His tool-using intelligence turned every rock and ridge into a weapon. But most importantly, his refusal to quit kept him fighting when any sensible creature would have fled or died. The pack broke after he killed the third stalker, snapping its neck with a technique he had learned fighting Krillian death worshippers in the Outer Rim. The survivors melted back into the darkness, carrying their wounded with them. Marcus checked his injuries in the pale light of Cathara's moons. Scratches and bruises, but nothing serious. His shirt was shredded, but his boots were intact. More importantly, he was still 18 kilometers from the research station, and the night was young. He resumed walking, leaving the alien blood to dry on his knuckles. Behind him, he could hear more Void Stalkers gathering. The scent of their dead packmates would draw others, and soon the entire territory would be alive with predators seeking revenge. Marcus looked forward to the challenge. The research station appeared on the horizon just as the first moon reached its zenith. The facility was larger than he had expected, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and towers that stretched across several hectares of cleared ground. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across abandoned equipment and overgrown paths. But it was the perimeter that caught his attention. The facility's defensive grid was still active as he had hoped. Automated turrets tracked back and forth across the wasteland, their targeting systems searching for threats. A shimmering energy barrier covered the entire complex, powerful enough to stop anything short of orbital bombardment. The Coalition had left their research station intact when they abandoned it. They had simply locked it down and walked away, confident that nothing on Cathara Prime could breach their technology. They had not planned for a human with intimate knowledge of their security systems. Marcus approached the main gate at a steady walk, his hands visible and empty. The targeting sensors locked onto him immediately, but he made no threatening moves. Instead, he stopped just outside the energy barrier and spoke clearly in Coalition Standard. Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha. Authorization Marcus Chen, Human Auxiliary Forces. Request immediate sanctuary under Section 12 of the Galactic Military Code. The system hesitated, running his voice pattern and biological signatures against its databases. Marcus waited patiently while defense systems that had been designed to keep everything out processed his request. After 30 seconds, the barrier flickered and created an opening just wide enough for one person to pass through. Marcus walked into the abandoned research facility and heard the barrier snap back into place behind him. For the first time since his capture, he allowed himself to relax slightly. The Coalition had made their first mistake when they assumed he was helpless without technology. Now they were about to discover what happened when humans had access to a fully equipped research station and 72 hours to prepare. The facility's main computer core was exactly where the mission files had indicated. Marcus placed his palm on the biometric scanner and waited for the system to grant him access. The Coalition's personnel database still listed him as an active contractor, and the research station's isolation meant it had not received updated security protocols. Within minutes, he was reviewing the facility's complete operational history and research data. What he found made him smile for the first time since his betrayal. The Coalition had not been studying weapons on Cathara Prime. They had been trying to create them. The research files detailed decades of experiments in genetic modification and biological enhancement. The scientists had been attempting to replicate the combat effectiveness of various Deathworld species, starting with creatures from Cathara Prime and expanding to include samples from across the galaxy, including humans. Marcus scrolled through file after file of failed experiments and abandoned projects. The Coalition's best geneticists had tried for years to understand what made certain species so effective in combat. They had mapped DNA sequences, analyzed muscle fibers, and dissected neural pathways. They had built mathematical models and run countless simulations. And they had completely missed the point. Physical capabilities could be measured and replicated. Technology could be reversed engineered and improved. But the will to survive, the refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds, the stubborn determination to keep fighting when logic demanded retreat, those could not be coded into a genetic sequence or programmed into a combat android. Those were learned through evolution on worlds that killed the weak and elevated the strong. Marcus began downloading the research data to a secure partition in the facility's memory core. The Coalition had betrayed him and left him to die, but they had also given him access to their most closely guarded secrets. When he walked out of this place, he would have enough information to revolutionize human military doctrine. If he walked out at all. The facility's external sensors showed massive heat signatures converging on the perimeter. Word of his earlier victory had spread through the local ecosystem, and every pack predator within 50 kilometers was coming to investigate. The defensive grid was holding for now, but the creatures were testing its limits with increasing aggression. Marcus checked the time display on the main terminal. 68 hours until the Coalition ship arrived to extract Vextar's squad. More than enough time to prepare a proper welcome. He began accessing the facility's manufacturing systems and equipment stockpiles. The research station had been designed to operate independently for years at a time, which meant it had everything needed to build or repair almost any type of technology, including weapons. Marcus smiled as he began planning his next move. The Coalition thought they had disposed of their human problem by leaving him to die in the wilderness. They had no idea that they had just given him exactly what he needed to show them the true meaning of human ingenuity. The hunt was about to begin in earnest, and this time the humans would be doing the hunting. The facility's automated medical bay finished treating Marcus's wounds as the first wave of void stalkers reached the perimeter. He watched through the security monitors as dozens of the creatures prowled around the energy barrier, their bioluminescent eyes creating a constellation of hostile stars in the darkness. They tested different sections of the defensive grid, probing for weaknesses with the methodical patience of natural predators. Marcus admired their intelligence. Most spacefaring species dismissed Deathworld fauna as mindless killing machines. But the stalkers were demonstrating sophisticated tactical thinking. They had learned to work together, to communicate through subtle chemical signals, and to adapt their hunting strategies based on their prey's behavior. It reminded him of human special forces doctrine. The medical scanner beeped as it completed its analysis of his blood chemistry. The results made Marcus pause. The alien atmosphere on Cathara Prime was supposed to be toxic to humans, requiring filtered breathing apparatus for anything more than short-term exposure. Yet his oxygen saturation levels were normal, and his cellular metabolism had actually improved since planetfall. He pulled up the research station's atmospheric data and cross-referenced it with the biological studies. The truth was buried in a subsection of xenobiology reports that most readers would have skipped entirely. Cathara Prime's atmosphere contained trace amounts of compounds that were indeed toxic to most known species. But human physiology was notoriously adaptable, and the research showed that extended exposure actually triggered beneficial mutations in human subjects. Increased muscle density, enhanced reflexes, improved oxygen processing, all side effects that the Coalition researchers had documented but never fully understood. The aliens had been studying humans on death worlds for decades, trying to unlock the secrets of their combat effectiveness. They had never realized they were watching human evolution in real time. Marcus smiled as he reviewed the manufacturing facility's capabilities. The research station was equipped with molecular assemblers capable of producing everything from basic tools to advanced weapons systems. The Coalition scientists had used them to create specialized equipment for studying dangerous specimens, but the same technology could be turned to other purposes. He began with basic necessities. Food and water were already handled by the facility's life support systems, but he would need clothing that could withstand the local environment. The assemblers created a tactical suit from memory cloth fibers, providing protection from temperature extremes while maintaining full mobility. The material was designed to repair minor damage automatically and could adapt its thermal properties based on environmental conditions. Next came weapons. The Coalition's research files contained detailed specifications for dozens of different combat systems, from simple projectile weapons to exotic energy devices. Marcus chose carefully, selecting designs that maximized effectiveness while minimizing resource consumption. The first weapon to emerge from the assemblers looked like nothing more than a simple metal rod, but Marcus knew its true capabilities. The device was a gravitational pulse generator capable of creating localized distortions in space-time that could crush armor or deflect incoming projectiles. Coalition special forces used similar weapons, but they had never optimized the design for human physiology. Marcus made adjustments to the targeting system, reducing the neural interface lag by compensating for human reaction times. He modified the power distribution to account for human grip strength and balance. By the time he finished, the weapon was perfectly suited for his specific capabilities. The external sensors registered new arrivals at the perimeter. Something much larger than the Void Stalkers was approaching from the southern wastes, its massive bulk causing the ground to vibrate with each step. Marcus switched to thermal imaging and saw a creature that defied easy classification. The local designation was a Titan Ravager, a solitary predator that stood nearly 4 meters tall and massed approximately 8 tons. Its hide was composed of overlapping bone plates that could deflect military-grade weapons fire, and its 6 arms ended in claws capable of shredding starship hull plating. According to the research files, Titan Ravagers were apex predators that even other Death World species avoided. The creature had come to investigate the disturbance at the research station, attracted by the concentration of potential prey. It ignored the smaller Void Stalkers as it approached the energy barrier, studying the defensive systems with obvious intelligence. Marcus watched with professional interest as the Ravager began testing the barrier's limits. It struck different sections with varying degrees of force, analyzing the energy feedback patterns. When direct assault proved ineffective, it began gathering debris and hurling chunks of stone at specific frequency points in the defensive grid. The creature was attempting to create a harmonic resonance cascade that would overload the barrier's power supply. "Impressive," Marcus said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty control room. "But you're about to learn why humans rule the galaxy." The facility's manufacturing systems had been working continuously for 12 hours, producing equipment according to Marcus's specifications. He now had access to weapons and tools that would have made a Coalition Special Forces team envious, but more importantly, he had something his enemies lacked: time to plan. Marcus activated the facility's communication array and began recording a message. The signal would be automatically transmitted to any Coalition vessel that entered the system, ensuring that Vextar's extraction team would receive it upon arrival. "Commander Vextar," Marcus began, his voice calm and professional, "I wanted to thank you for the educational opportunity. Your decision to strand me on Kithara Prime has provided valuable insights into Coalition military doctrine and xenobiological research. I've taken the liberty of reviewing your classified files, and I must say, your scientists' work has been most illuminating." He paused to check the security monitors. The Titan Ravager had been joined by 2 more of its kind, and the pack dynamics among the Void Stalkers were becoming more aggressive. Soon they would coordinate a full assault on the facility's defenses. "I notice your research team spent considerable effort trying to understand what makes humans effective in combat," Marcus continued. "Your genetic analysis was thorough, your physiological mapping was comprehensive, and your psychological profiles were remarkably detailed. Yet you missed the most important factor entirely. The facility's power grid fluctuated as something struck the barrier with tremendous force. Marcus glanced at the readings and saw that the Titan Ravagers had begun their attack in earnest, focusing their assault on the northern section where the defensive grid was oldest. "You see, Commander, you studied humans as if we were just another species that had adapted to hostile environments. You analyzed our muscle fiber density, our neural pathway efficiency, our cardiovascular performance. You built mathematical models of our capabilities and compared them to other Death World species." Marcus stood and walked to the observation deck, looking out through armored windows at the alien predators that surrounded the facility. In the pale moonlight, they looked like demons from ancient human mythology, creatures of nightmare given flesh and fury. "But you never understood what makes humans truly dangerous," he said, still recording his message. "It's not our physical capabilities, though those are considerable. It's not our technology, though we've proven quite adept at using yours against you. The real reason humans dominate the galaxy is much simpler. A massive impact shook the entire facility as all three Titan Ravagers struck the barrier simultaneously. Warning lights flashed as power levels dropped to 60% of normal capacity. The defensive grid was holding, but it would not last much longer. Marcus activated the facility's internal manufacturing systems and began implementing his primary plan. The research station's laboratories contained samples of genetic material from hundreds of species collected over decades of xenobiological study. More importantly, they contained detailed maps of local ecosystem relationships and predator behaviors. The reason humans are dangerous, Marcus continued his recording, is that we don't just adapt to hostile environments. We improve them. We don't just survive in impossible conditions. We thrive in them. And we don't just defend ourselves from superior predators. We turn them into allies. The first phase of his plan involved the facility's atmospheric processors. Marcus had spent hours studying the chemical signatures that different species used for communication and territory marking. By carefully adjusting the atmospheric output, he could broadcast messages that would be understood by every predator species within a 100-kilometer radius. The message was simple. Something had invaded their territory and was challenging their dominance, something that needed to be eliminated through coordinated effort. The second phase required more delicate work. Marcus accessed the facility's genetic manipulation equipment and began synthesizing a cocktail of pheromones and biochemical markers. The mixture would identify him as a member of the local ecosystem rather than an invasive species, allowing him to move among the native predators without triggering their attack responses. "Your extraction team will arrive in approximately 56 hours, Marcus said, checking the chronometer. "I wanted to give them adequate warning about what they'll be facing when they attempt to retrieve you and your squad." The barrier failed, with a sound like breaking thunder. Emergency lighting bathed the facility in red as massive claws began tearing through the outer walls. Marcus sealed the control room and continued his preparations, working with the calm efficiency of someone who had faced impossible odds before. "You see, Commander, humans don't just fight for survival. We fight for dominance. And once we've established our position in the hierarchy, we tend to hold it rather tenaciously." The genetic treatment was ready. Marcus injected the synthesized compounds into his bloodstream and felt the immediate effects as his body chemistry began to change. His scent markers would now identify him as a Kithara Prime native, specifically a variant of apex predator that even Titan Ravagers would respect. The facility's internal sensors registered massive breaches in the outer sections as the alien predators poured through the damaged barriers. Marcus could hear their claws scraping against metal corridors and their hunting calls echoing through empty laboratories. But instead of searching for him, the creatures were responding to the chemical signals he had programmed into the atmospheric system. They were gathering in the central courtyard, drawn by messages that spoke of territory violation and the need for coordinated defense. Marcus sealed his weapons in a bio-neutral container and made his way to the facility's main airlock. The biochemical treatment would protect him from immediate attack, but moving among apex predators required more than just chemical camouflage. It required confidence. Marcus stepped into the courtyard and found himself surrounded by the most dangerous creatures on Kithara Prime. Void stalkers prowled the perimeter, while Titan Ravagers dominated the center of the space. Other species had answered the call as well. Armored predators he recognized from the research files, and several that were entirely new to human science. They turned to study him as he emerged from the facility, their alien senses analyzing his scent markers and biochemical signature. Marcus met their gazes without flinching, projecting the calm authority of a dominant predator claiming his territory. One of the Titan Ravagers approached, moving with surprising grace for something so massive. It lowered its head to Marcus's level and examined him with eyes that held disturbing intelligence. Marcus stood perfectly still as razor-sharp claws passed within centimeters of his throat. After several tense seconds, the creature stepped back and issued a low, rumbling call that resonated through the ground. The other predators responded with similar vocalizations, a complex sequence of sounds that Marcus recognized as acceptance into the pack hierarchy. He had successfully established himself as a member of the local ecosystem's apex predator community. Phase 3 is now complete. Marcus continued his message to Vexitar, speaking quietly so as not to disturb his new allies. I've established diplomatic relations with the native species and explained the situation regarding territorial intrusion by off-world forces. Marcus gestured to the assembled predators, their forms barely visible in the facility's emergency lighting. They've agreed to assist me in defending their territory from further incursions. I believe you'll find their hospitality somewhat less accommodating than what I experienced from your squad. The largest Titan Ravager approached Marcus again, this time carrying something in its massive claws. It was a piece of wreckage from a coalition vehicle, twisted metal bearing the distinctive markings of Zephyrian military technology. Marcus examined the debris and realized what it represented. Vexitar's extraction beacon hadn't been destroyed by his sabotage. It had been discovered and dismantled by the local predators, who had recognized it as foreign technology invading their territory. The coalition squad was already stranded, and their ship would arrive to find a very different situation than what they expected. I should mention, Marcus added to his recording, that your personnel files indicate standard coalition doctrine for dealing with Death World environments. You rely on technological superiority and orbital support to maintain tactical advantage. Unfortunately, Kythera Prime's atmospheric conditions interfere with most targeting systems, and the local geology makes precision orbital bombardment inadvisable. He gestured to the predators around him, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Also, I've taken the liberty of briefing the local wildlife on coalition military capabilities. They've expressed considerable interest in testing their hunting skills against off-world prey. Marcus concluded his message and set the transmission to repeat on all frequencies. By the time Vexitar's extraction team arrived, they would understand exactly what they were facing. A human who had not merely survived on a death world, but had claimed it as his territory. The assembled predators began dispersing back into the wasteland, carrying with them new chemical markers that would spread throughout the ecosystem. Every creature on Kythera Prime would soon know that an apex predator had taken control of the research facility and established new territorial boundaries. They would also know that this predator had allies among their own kind. Marcus returned to the facility and began the final phase of his preparations. The coalition extraction team would arrive with overwhelming technological advantages, but technology alone had never been enough to guarantee victory against human ingenuity. Especially when that ingenuity was backed by 8 tons of Titan Ravager muscle and claws that could shred starship armor. Commander Vexitar was about to learn why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous species, and this lesson would be administered by the deadliest professor in the known universe. A human with something to prove, and an army of apex predators eager to help him prove it. The coalition extraction ship Sovereign Pride dropped out of hyperspace exactly 72 hours after Commander Vexitar's scheduled retrieval time. Captain Thrixvar studied the tactical display with growing unease as his sensors painted a picture that defied military logic. Communications. What's the status on the ground team's beacon? No response from the primary extraction point. Sir, the Zephyrian communications officer replied. However, we're receiving a repeating transmission from the abandoned research facility. The signal appears to be from the human mercenary. Captain Thrixvar's scales rippled with annoyance. The human should have been dead for days. Why wasn't he terminated before abandonment? Commander Vexitar classified the human as a minimal threat, sir. Standard protocol for disposal of expired assets was followed. The captain reviewed Vexitar's mission report with increasing irritation. Leaving a human alive on a death world was either incredibly careless or stupendously arrogant. Given Vexitar's reputation for both qualities, it was probably a combination of both. Play the transmission. Marcus Chen's voice filled the bridge with calm professionalism that made Thrixvar's dorsal spines bristle. The human spoke as if he were filing a routine status report rather than broadcasting from certain death. Captain Thrixvar, by now you've realized that your ground team has missed their extraction window. I wanted to personally assure you that Commander Vexitar and his squad are alive and well, though their current accommodations are somewhat less comfortable than they might prefer. The tactical officer looked up from his displays. Sir, we're detecting multiple heat signatures around the research facility. The local fauna appears unusually active. I've taken the liberty of reviewing your classified files regarding xenobiological warfare research. The transmission continued. Your scientists' work on Deathworld combat adaptation was fascinating, though I noticed several gaps in their understanding of human psychology. I'd like to offer a practical demonstration to correct those deficiencies. Captain Thrixvar ordered an immediate scan of the research facility. What his sensors revealed made him question their accuracy. The defensive perimeter had been completely rebuilt, using technology that exceeded coalition military standards. Energy signatures indicated weapon systems that appeared to be hybrids of alien and human design. Most disturbing of all, the local predator species weren't attacking the facility. They were defending it. Your current tactical situation is as follows. Marcus continued his broadcast. Your ground team is being held in a secure location approximately 12 kilometers southwest of the research facility. They are unharmed but confined, serving as what humans call bargaining chips in the negotiations that will determine their future. Thrixvar activated his command communications array. Ground team, respond immediately. A different voice answered, strained but unmistakably Zephyrian. Captain, this is Commander Vexitar. Do not attempt landing or orbital bombardment. The human has formed an alliance with the local predators. Repeat, do not engage. The entire ecosystem is under his control. The bridge fell silent as the implications became clear. No human should have been able to survive more than a few hours on Kethera Prime, let alone establish dominance over its apex predator species. Yet the evidence was undeniable. I understand your confusion, Marcus continued, as if reading their thoughts. Your xenobiological models predicted that I would be killed within the first night of exposure to the local environment. Those models were based on studies of humans in controlled laboratory conditions, which failed to account for certain variables that only manifest under extreme stress. Captain Thrixvar pulled up the research files that had been transmitted from the facility. What he read made his secondary heart skip several beats. The human had accessed decades of classified data on coalition military capabilities, xenobiological research, and strategic intelligence. But more troubling was what the human had done with that information. The research conducted at this facility attempted to replicate the combat effectiveness of Deathworld species through genetic manipulation and technological enhancement, Marcus explained. Your scientists were particularly interested in understanding what makes humans effective soldiers, despite our apparent physical limitations compared to other species. The facility's external sensors showed movement in the wasteland surrounding the research station. Massive heat signatures were converging on the landing zone that Captain Thrixvar had designated for the extraction operation. Every apex predator within 100 kilometers appeared to be responding to some kind of coordinated signal. Your fundamental error was assuming that human combat effectiveness derives from biological advantages, the transmission continued. While it's true that Deathworld evolution has shaped our physical capabilities, our real strength comes from something that cannot be measured in laboratory conditions. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted, I'm detecting artificial pheromone broadcasts throughout the local atmosphere. Someone is using biochemical signals to coordinate the native species. The human, Thrixvar realized with growing horror. He's turned the entire moon into a weapon. What you're witnessing is the application of human pack psychology to an alien ecosystem, Marcus confirmed. Every species on Cathara Prime now recognizes me as the dominant alpha in their territorial hierarchy. More importantly, they understand that defending their territory requires eliminating threats to their pack leader. The research facility's defensive systems powered up as three massive shapes emerged from underground lairs around the installation's perimeter. Captain Thrixvar recognized them from the biological survey data as Titan Ravagers, but the creatures were behaving in ways that defied everything in the scientific literature. They were following tactical formations. "Captain," Vextar's voice crackled over the communication channel. "The human has been studying our military doctrine for days. He knows our standard operating procedures, our weapons capabilities, and our tactical preferences. Every move we make is being predicted and countered before we can implement it." Impossible. One human cannot outmaneuver a coalition military operation. One human with an army of apex predators can, came the grim reply. Marcus's transmission shifted to a more formal tone. "Captain Thrixvar, you now have a choice to make. You can attempt a military extraction of your ground team, which will result in the total destruction of your ship and the death of everyone aboard. Or you can accept my terms for a negotiated resolution to this situation." "What terms?" Thrixvar demanded. "First, you will transmit a complete record of this incident to Coalition High Command, including all data I'm about to provide regarding the true nature of human combat psychology. Second, you will ensure that the classified research conducted at this facility is made available to human military intelligence through appropriate channels." The captain's scales darkened with rage. "You're demanding that we provide state secrets to an enemy species. I'm offering to trade the lives of your people for information that will help prevent future misunderstandings between our species," Marcus corrected calmly. "The alternative is a demonstration of what happens when humans are forced to solve problems through violence instead of negotiation." Captain Thrixvar considered his options. Military doctrine called for orbital bombardment followed by marine insertion, but the tactical situation was unlike anything in coalition training manuals. The local predators had formed a defensive network that would make any landing operation a nightmare, and the human had proven capable of turning coalition technology against its creators. "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "the human appears to have modified the research facility's defensive systems. I'm detecting gravitational distortion fields, quantum disruption matrices, and what appears to be a localized space-time manipulation device." "He built those weapons from laboratory equipment?" "Apparently so, sir. The energy signatures match coalition military hardware, but the configurations are completely unknown. It's as if he reverse-engineered our most advanced systems and improved them." Captain Thrixvar realized he was facing something that coalition military theory had never anticipated. A human who had been given time to prepare, access to advanced technology, and sufficient motivation to apply maximum creativity to the problem of killing aliens. "The third condition," Marcus continued his broadcast, "is that you will provide transportation for myself and representatives of the local ecosystem to the nearest coalition trade station. We have business to discuss with your diplomatic corps." "Representatives of the local ecosystem?" Thrixvar repeated. His question was answered by movement on the facility's landing platform. 3 Titan Ravagers emerged from the complex, their massive forms moving with disciplined precision. Behind them came dozens of smaller predators, all moving in coordinated formations that suggested military training. But it was the figure walking among them that made the captain's blood freeze. Marcus Chen moved through the alien predators like a commanding officer inspecting his troops, completely at ease among creatures that could dismember a platoon of coalition marines without breaking stride. "As you can see," Marcus said, "I've successfully established diplomatic relations with the native government of Kythera Prime. They've expressed interest in joining the galactic community, particularly in matters relating to security and defense contracts." The implications hit Captain Thrixvar like a physical blow. The human hadn't just survived on a death world, he had turned it into a potential ally for humanity. Every predator species on the moon was now effectively under human command, creating a military asset that could revolutionize the balance of power in the galaxy. "Your decision, Captain," Marcus concluded. "Peace and mutual understanding, or a very educational demonstration of why humans have earned their reputation as the most dangerous species in known space." Thrixvar looked at his tactical display, where hundreds of heat signatures now surrounded the facility in defensive positions. Each signature represented a creature evolved specifically to kill in one of the galaxy's most hostile environments, and all of them were apparently willing to follow the orders of a single human. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered his crew. "Prepare for diplomatic negotiations." "Sir?" his weapons officer asked incredulously. "You heard the humans' analysis of our tactical situation. We're not fighting one stranded mercenary. We're facing the entire ecosystem of a death world that has declared war on any species that threatens their pack leader." Captain Thrixvar opened a communication channel to the surface. "Mr. Chen, the Coalition is prepared to discuss your terms." "Excellent," came the reply. "I'll be sending up a shuttle with my negotiating team shortly. I should warn you that several of my colleagues are somewhat large and have very specific dietary requirements. I trust your ship's medical bay is well stocked." "Colleagues?" the captain asked weakly. "The Alpha representatives from each species in our alliance. They insist on being personally involved in any diplomatic discussions that affect their territory. I'm sure you understand the importance of proper protocol when dealing with apex predators." An hour later, Captain Thrixvar found himself in his own conference room, facing the most unusual diplomatic party in Coalition history. Marcus Chen sat at one end of the table, looking perfectly comfortable in his improvised tactical gear. Around him, carefully positioned to avoid triggering each other's territorial instincts, were the alpha specimens of Kythera Prime's most dangerous predator species. The largest Titan Ravager had somehow been squeezed through the ship's cargo airlocks and now dominated one entire wall of the conference room. Its 6 arms were folded in what Marcus assured them was a gesture of peaceful intent, but its claws remained visible as a reminder of what those intentions could become. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, using the Coalition's formal diplomatic opening, "let me introduce my colleagues. Alpha Prime here represents the Titan Ravager clans. Shadow speaks for the Void Stalker packs, and Spine leads the Razor Drake territories." Each creature responded to its introduction with what Marcus claimed were traditional greetings, though to Captain Thrixvar they sounded disturbingly like hunting calls. "Now then," Marcus continued, "let's discuss the future relationship between humanity and the Coalition, particularly as it relates to the proper treatment of human military personnel." "What do you want?" Thrixvar asked bluntly. "Simply put, recognition that humans are not expendable assets to be discarded when convenient. We're a species with our own interests, our own capabilities, and our own diplomatic relationships." Marcus gestured to his alien companions. "As you can see, we're quite good at making friends in unlikely places." The human leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. "The Coalition has spent decades trying to understand what makes humans effective soldiers. You've analyzed our biology, studied our psychology, and tested our capabilities under controlled conditions. But you never understood the most important factor. Which is? We don't just adapt to hostile environments. We conquer them. We don't just survive impossible odds. We thrive on them. And we don't just fight for survival. We fight for dominance. Marcus smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. When you left me to die on this moon, you weren't disposing of a problem. You were creating one. Captain Thrixvar looked around the conference room at creatures that represented millions of years of evolution designed specifically for killing. All of them now followed the orders of a single human who had been written off as expendable. "What are your specific demands?" he asked. "Full military alliance between humanity and the Cathara Prime ecosystem," Marcus replied promptly. "Mutual defense pacts, technology sharing agreements, and joint training operations. Also, formal apologies to the human governments for violations of interspecies military law, plus reparations for the attempted murder of a coalition contractor." "And if we refuse?" Marcus gestured toward Alpha Prime, who responded by extending one massive claw and casually carving deep grooves in the conference table's armored surface. "Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop trying to fit into your existing power structure and start building their own," Marcus said calmly. "I should mention that Cathara Prime is just one moon in a system with 12 habitable worlds. Several of them host even more interesting ecosystems than this one." The threat was clear. Humanity now had potential allies among the most dangerous predator species in Coalition space, species that had been studied and documented, but never considered as possible military assets. Captain Thrixvar realized he was witnessing the birth of a new kind of warfare. Not just human against alien, but human-led coalitions of death-world predators against traditional military forces. The implications were staggering. "I'll need to consult with Coalition Command," he said finally. "Of course," Marcus agreed. "Take all the time you need. My friends and I aren't going anywhere." He paused, then added with a slight smile. "Though I should mention that breeding season starts in 3 months, and several species are already showing increased territorial behavior. It might be wise to conclude negotiations before the local population doubles." Captain Thrixvar looked at the assembled predators and imagined twice as many of them prowling through Coalition space under human command. The thought made his scales crawl. "I'll transmit your terms immediately," he said. As the diplomatic party prepared to return to the surface, Marcus paused at the airlock entrance. "Captain, there's one more thing you should include in your report to Coalition Command." "What's that?" "Tell them that humans remember their friends," Marcus said quietly. "But we never forget our enemies. Commander Vextar and his squad will be released unharmed as a gesture of good faith. But their names are now known to every apex predator on this moon." "Meaning?" "Meaning that if they ever return to Death World territory, they won't be treated as honored guests." Marcus's smile became predatory. "Humans aren't the only species that hold grudges, Captain. We're just the ones who've learned to organize them into military doctrine." 3 days later, the Coalition Council received Captain Thrixvar's report and emergency recommendations. Within a week, formal apologies were issued to human governments across 3 sectors. Within a month, the first joint training exercises between human special forces and Cathara Prime ecosystem defenders were underway. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humans. Unfortunately for some, the education had come at a very high price. Marcus Chen was promoted to Diplomatic Liaison for Human Ecosystem Relations, a position that had been created specifically to manage his growing influence among Death World predator species. His first official act was to establish the Apex Predator Coalition, a military alliance that would soon change the balance of power throughout known space. Commander Vextar was reassigned to a desk job on a peaceful agricultural world where the most dangerous local fauna were herbivorous herd animals. He spent the rest of his career filing reports about grain harvests and occasionally waking up in a cold sweat, remembering the sound of human laughter echoing through alien hunting calls. The most dangerous apex beast in the galaxy had indeed been left to die. Instead, it had learned to thrive and had taught others to follow its example. The Coalition would spend decades trying to understand exactly how badly they had miscalculated the true nature of human warfare. But Marcus Chen already knew the answer. Humans didn't just fight to survive, they fought to win. And once they had claimed victory, they made sure everyone understood the rules of the new game. The age of human dominance had begun not with conquest, but with a single man who refused to die when he was supposed to. Sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with ships and armies, but with pure stubborn determination and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy was learning that humans had perfected both strategies long before they reached the stars.